All right, welcome to our Excel Day 2 screencast. Today we are going to go over topics like data importing and data cleanup to be able to bring in data from other sources and other files into Excel so that we can use them to format them and analyze them. We can also go over creating tables, learning how to present some of our data in a more readable way. So if you haven't already, go ahead and go to files.learnsoftware.org and download the Excel Day 2 files. So if you see on my screen Excel Day 2, just click here and it will download a zip file which will contain a couple of the files that we're going to use today. So in this folder you will notice that there is a couple of text documents. So if we just open up this very first one, this formatting data.txt, you can see that it's just a very basic text document. There's nothing super special about it. It has a lot of data that right now is quite difficult to read. But we can bring this into Excel and we can make it look a lot better. One thing that is important to notice about this data is that everything is separated by tabs. So for the most part, everything is lined up, but you can see that there are a couple of these that are a little bit messed up. But that is perfectly fine for what we are going to do with it. So we can close out of this, and we can open up Excel, create a new blank workbook, and then we can start importing our data. So if we come to the data tab up in the top, over here are our data importing options. So of course right now we want to import from text, from that text document that we just downloaded. So if you click on that button and navigate to our Excel Day 2 files and select this formatting data.txt, we can hit get data and this will pull up the import wizard, which will help us to format our data and get it looking right when we import it. So it doesn't look quite as messed up as it did in the text document. So the first option that it brings up with are how our data is talking about how our data is separated. So delimited means that each cell that we want to import is separated by a specific character, either by a space or by a tab character, or perhaps a comma, or a period, or any sort of thing like that. That's just meaning that every single one of your columns is separated by the same character. Fixed width is a little bit harder to work with because it is implying that your data is already lined up into columns. So we're going to go with delimited because our data is separated by tabs. So if we hit next, now it brings us to the option of which character is delimiting our data. So by default it has tab selected, which is perfect. That's exactly what we want. And if you look down here, you can see that it's giving us a little bit more of a preview of what our data is looking like. So you can see that it's separated into each of these different columns with our employee name, position, phone number, and so on and so forth, because each of them is separated by a tab. You can check off more of these if you would like, just to see what would happen. I think the only one that really has an effect right here is space, and that will separate our employee name column into two separate ones, which maybe is not quite what we want right now. So we can just leave it at tab, hit next again, and then this brings us to the data format for each one of our columns, which allows us to select different columns and select a specific format for them. For example, if we had a date that we needed to format, then it would no longer look just like a number, but it would be formatted as a date. But we don't need to do any of that with our data right now, so we can just hit finish. And now it'll ask us where we want to put our data. It by default just has the top left cell, so that works for us. We can just hit OK, and it brings in all of our data beautifully. So this is already a big step above what we had in our text document. However, there are still a couple of problems with our data that we want to fix. If you look closely at this data, and if you are actually reading through some of the names that are in here, you'll begin to notice that there are a lot of duplicates, that there are a lot of names that appear twice. For example, here are two Jamie Morrisons that are right next to each other, exactly the same numbers, and exactly the same data. So if we were to keep all of these duplicates in our data, then that would make it a lot harder to analyze and a lot harder to get results that we want and get accurate readings from these numbers. So it is always important that we make sure that our data is clean, so that we can get clean results. So the first thing that we can work on right now is removing duplicates, which Excel makes extremely easy. First, we just need to select all of our data, which we can do by selecting the top left cell and then holding Command and Shift while pressing right and then pressing down. So this will select all of our data that we have here. And now we can, once again, in the Data tab, click Remove Duplicates. This brings up a quick option with a checkbox that says that we have headers, which we do, and then which columns we want to analyze. And it all looks good, so we can just hit OK. And it removes more than half of our values because more than half of them were duplicates. But now our data is looking a lot better and is much cleaner, easier to analyze. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to separate this employee name column into possibly first and last name. So it is easier to organize and easier to see who is where. So to do that, the first thing that we need to do is we need to insert a couple of new columns to store that data. So what we'll do is we will select the entire column B just by selecting on B up here. You can see how the cursor turns into a downward facing arrow. And then in the Home tab up here, we can just hit Insert Sheet Columns. And we can just hit that twice to make sure that we have enough space for what we are going to do here. Next, we want to select our data. So we can just click and drag over all of this that we want to separate, and then come back to the Data tab and come to this button, this Text to Columns button. So if you select this, it brings up a very similar wizard to when we were importing our data. This time our data is once again delimited, but it is not delimited by a tab, it's delimited by a space. So we can check that and uncheck tab. And we can hit next and finish. And there you go, it splits our data into two columns now. We can now see that I made an extra column here. We didn't need to make two, which is an easy fix. We can select column C, come back to the Home tab, and then hit delete. All right. So now we need to rename these columns to first name and last name. And things are are looking a lot better. The next thing we want to work on is formatting our numbers so they are a lot more readable. For example, we can format our phone numbers so they have possibly hyphens in them, because we generally don't write phone numbers just as a long string of numbers. So we can select all of these, and we want to come to our number formats options, which are in the Home tab once again, and it's located under this drop down that just says General. If you hover over it, you can see that it comes up with number format. So if you drop this down, you can come down to more number formats. There are a lot of useful ones that come up in this drop down, but none for phone number right now. So we can come to more number formats, and this will bring up a new panel. If we look through these, we can maybe see that none of them quite fit our needs, so none of the specific ones, so we can come to special, and this has a couple of awesome formats for us. So we can select phone number, and then it gives you a little preview of what this phone number will look like, which is awesome. So we can click OK, and then this is all formatted to the correct format and looking very good. Next we can do that once again with the social security number that we have here. Come to number formats, more number formats, special, and there's a social security number option right here. Okay, then these totals on the right we can format to currency, which will bring up, we'll add all the dollar signs and also all of the cent amounts. But for this data, I don't really think we need that 0.00 after every single one, because every single one of this data is an exact dollar amount. So we can just get rid of that by coming up to these little options right here. These will display more or less decimal places after, places after the decimal. So you can hit that twice and then the zeros go away. And now these are in the currency format, which is looking very good. Next thing we can do is we can format the BYU ID. This one is going to be very similar to the phone number and the social security number. However, there is no preset Excel format for this one. So once again, come to number formats and then more number formats. Now we want to create a custom format. And so we will want to type in our custom format right here in type. So to create a number format, you can see down here in this list of customs that it has a lot of zeros and a lot of pound signs, as well as some other characters. These zeros and pound signs are very special characters because they are number placeholders. A zero indicates a number that will always display, and a pound sign indicates a number that will only display if there is enough digits in your number to display that. And then each of one of these other characters are just indicating to display that character. So since BYU IDs are all the same length, we can just stick with using zeros. And we can type in our format, which would be 00-000-0000. So 2, then 3, and then 4 zeros. And you can see it's giving us a sample up here of what this will look like based on our very top column. And this is exactly what we want. We want 2, then 3, then 4 numbers, each separated by a dash. So we can hit OK, and then that will format our numbers to look how we want. Okay, the next thing that we will do is we will go over creating tables to have a more attractive display of our data, as well as sorting and filtering our data. So the first thing that we want to do is select our entire table, either by clicking and dragging over it, or that Command Shift right and then down to select it all. And then in this Home tab, there's this nice drop down called Format as Table, which when you click it brings up a ton of different style options, which really have no impact on the function. So you can select which one looks best to you. Then once you select one, it brings up this box, which we want to make sure that we have this checked that says my table has headers, which once again is talking about this top row, which is not included in the data, but we still want it to be included in our table. So we can hit OK and yes, and then it formats our table to look very nice. Now, tables are great tools in Excel because they offer a lot of sorting options, which are very fast. So if we come to perhaps this last name, you can see that now we have these drop downs that have appeared, and we can select how we want to sort them. So we can say ascending A to Z, and there we go. It just sorted all of our data. Very, very easy. We can also sort by position, alphabetically, to divide each column. You can sort by phone number if you really want to, or any of these data fields. There is a more powerful sort that is available, which is not you cannot do just out of these drop downs, but it is still in the Home tab if you come to this Sort and Filter button. So we can hit Custom Sort here, and this brings up the option to have multi-level sorting. So that means to possibly sort by one of these columns, and then as a secondary sort by another. So we don't really want it to be sorted by phone numbers, so we can just hit the minus button here to get rid of that. Now we can add a level, and this brings up a new form that we can fill in. So we want to sort by, let's sort by position first, and then value is A to Z. That looks good. Now we want to add another rule. So now it says then by, say, last name A to Z. So now when we hit OK, it sorts by position, and then within each of these positions it alphabetizes by last name. So this multi-level sorting, once again in this top right sort and filter, is a very powerful option to display your data and to organize your data into a more coherent way. Now we want to add some totals to our data, which is extremely easy in a table. So what we can do is we can just come over to this column K, and we can title this total. Now when you hit enter, it creates a new column in your table for you very quickly. Now in this top cell, we can type a formula. We can say this equals sum open parentheses, and we want to sum up each of these quarters. So now when you have this open parentheses, you can click and drag over these 4 quarters, and it will fill in your function right there. And you can type in the closing parentheses and hit enter. And there it fills in the entire table for you of that sum function, totaling up each one of these rows into a total. Okay, next we will want to total up each of these individual quarters, as well as totaling up having a grand total here in the bottom, which we can add another row onto the bottom, a totals row, by coming over to this table tab. And then there's this nice checkbox right here that's called total row. If you select that, then it brings up this bottom row called total, and you can see it already has a grand total in it for us. And it is very simple to add these other totals just by adding another sum function. So you can say equals sum, and then this Q1 right here. Okay, now we can just copy and paste this formula into each one of these, or a simple way is just by grabbing this little box on the bottom and dragging it over. So this will, if you click on these now, you can see up in the formula bar, it has converted the formula to sum each of the different quarters, which is perfect. Okay, so our data is looking a lot better. There's still one more thing that we can do to easily display and look at our different data, and that is what we call inserting a slicer. So once again, in this table tab, you can see that there's this insert slicer button, and if you select it, it brings up this box that is asking about which sort of column you want to organize by. So I'm going to select position once again, and when you hit OK, it brings up this new little box, which is an interactive box that changes what is displayed in your table. So if you were to select one of these categories, let's say I select inventory, then it cuts out everything else and only displays everybody who has the inventory position. You can select multiple of these, or change which one you view. To select multiple, just come up and click this button right here that's multi-select. So now we can view everybody who is in inventory or production. Or once again, by selecting all of them, we can view everyone. So this slicer can also be applied to other fields, but it is probably best with this data on the position. But it is an easy way to view different totals and different data based on the different groups and categories that you have here. The last thing that we're going to cover today is conditional formatting, which is one last visual way to represent totals and compare data. So we can apply that to our totals row just by selecting this, and then in the Home tab, you can see that it jumped automatically for me. There's this option called Conditional Formatting. There are lots of different options to play with, but it basically will format your cell differently based on the number inside of it. So we can add possibly data bars. So if you select one of these, it will add different bars into each of these cells depending on the value. Or we can let's see, we can add a color scale which will color the cell. We can say my data bars are getting in the way now. Yeah, we can add a color scale which will color the cells differently based on their totals. Or any other sort of icon sets or things like that. So this is a very easy way to display your data and to visually see those comparisons that are being made. I'll just add in some bars again. And so that is everything that we're going to go over today in Excel, this Excel screencast for day 2. Thank you for watching, and we hope that we have been able to teach you something, and we hope that you are able to use Excel better, to organize, format, and display your data in a more efficient way. Thank you.